You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Welcome to Catholic Chicago on WNDZ 750 AM, 312-255-8408. You can also get us on youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. Again, youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. Father Greg Sakowicz, the rector of Holy Name Cathedral in Chicago, and co-host with us this morning, Mark Teresi,
yes.
Executive Director. Mark, you look a bit tired this morning.
Yeah, before you ask how my weekend was, the one highlight was our son and his wife and our little 2-year-old James came over for breakfast on Saturday because I know nothing about technology, and our son fixed the TV and fixed this and fixed that, and little James loves it because our condo has a long corridor, which he doesn't have at home, and all he did was run back and forth.
The energy level of children,
unbelievable.
You see him in the back of church running, you see him in playgrounds yelling and running. And Mark, we were once like that.
Yeah, what happened?
Back and forth, and what happened in terms of the energy level of children, but they're so without guile. What you see is what you get. So here James sees a long corridor. I'm glad I can walk it.
Right.
And he's doing laps.
Right. And as they observe things, like he squats down, and I thought, oh my God, I'd never get up.
If I squatted down, it would take two guys to get me up.
Exactly.
It's just unbelievable. And the Bears lost again.
Yeah.
And it's not that Justin Fields is a great quarterback. Tremendous athlete, phenomenal runner, and developing as a passer. And the Bears lost to a very good team, the Miami Dolphins, and the Bulls are struggling.
He can't do it alone, though. Fields can't do it alone.
They're in the rebuilding mode, and watch 2-3 years down the road as they build up draft choices, get free agency. They'll be very competitive, but they're very entertaining. Oh. They lose 35-32. They've put up a lot of points the last 3 weeks.
I thought your White Sox were in a rebuilding mode this year.
Oh, rebuilding. They're supposed to be World Series.
I know.
Oh, it can't go there. No. But congratulations to the Houston Astros, the World Series champs. I was actually cheering for the Phillies because they came out of the last wild card spot with 87 victories, the number 6 seed, went all the way to the World Series, cleared the underdogs who got hot, and Kyle Schwarber, an ex-Cub.
How about it?
Tremendous home run hitter and team player for Philadelphia. So baseball, it took until like November 5th for baseball to come to a close. Now we can focus on football, hockey, and basketball, but we don't have great teams in Chicago. But
now our older listeners and viewers would remember Mike Royko coined the Chicago factor, where guys were traded and then like Schwarber's in the World Series.
Oh, and careers took off.
Yeah.
And careers took off. We have a great program lined up again, 312-255-8408, WNDZ 750 AM. Get us also on youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. The vocation of a deacon is to serve the bishops and priests in ministry, the people of God. Permanent deacons, especially married ones, often exercise their ministry within the context of their local parish. Deacons assist priests and bishops in celebrating the sacraments and the educational and charitable programs of the parishes. The Archdiocese of Chicago has the largest Catholic diaconate community in the world, with 514 active deacons involved in 210 parishes and agencies within the Archdiocese of Chicago. Since 1972, which is 50 years now, the Archdiocese has ordained 1,000 464 men as permanent deacons. With us as guest, Deacon James Norman, who heads up the diaconate program in Chicago, and Deacon Dave Brunsick. James and Dave, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Those are some very phenomenal numbers. 514 active deacons in the Archdiocese, 1,464 ordained in the last 50 years. And I'll tell you, I've served and worked with many deacons in the Archdiocese, tremendous men, and also with their wives, wonderful couples who've served the people of God so well. Out of curiosity, James, ordained a deacon in what year?
2013.
And Dave?
So approaching 10 years.
How about you, Dave?
1999.
Okay, so 23 years and approaching 9 years. And James, you are from what parish growing up as a child?
Our Lady of Sorrows Basilica.
Oh,
Okay, and how about for you, Dave?
St. Nicholas of Tolentine on the southwest side.
And what high school, Dave?
Hubbard High School, Catholic Grammar School.
And what Catholic? Okay, and how about what high school?
St. Nicholas.
St. Nicholas. How about for you, high school, James?
St. Ignatius College Prep.
Okay, St. Ignatius. So maybe for listeners, there's still sometimes what I call a lot of confusion between the permanent diaconate, transitional diaconate, and priesthood. People get very, very confused. So either James or Dave, in just maybe a minute or two, briefly, the difference, like in your roles, what are you presently, and what does it mean to be a permanent deacon in the Archdiocese of Chicago?
So, and I'll let Dave jump in as well. So I'm a permanent deacon, married. The deacon is the icon of Christ the servant. It's a threefold ministry: service to the word, proclaiming the word of God, which we should all do as baptized Catholics, being priest, prophet, and king. The second is service in the liturgy. And then the third is service to poor, so acts of charity. So threefold ministry, the icon of Christ the servant. I'm a permanent deacon, different from someone who's was on the path towards ordination as a priest. They go through transitional deacon for about a 6-month period.
Want to add to that,
Also,
Dave?
we take a vow of, many of the deacons are married. So that's their first vocation. So we take a vow that if our wives, precede us in death, that we will not marry again.
And remain as deacons, but now in a celibate state.
Yes.
now as you look at your vocation, one of the things that I had read not too long ago was you presented a check to St. Nicholas Cathedral School in support of their ministry. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Why St. Nicholas? How did you folks as deacons see that as an important connect for your ministry?
As a result of the war in Ukraine, over 70 students from Ukraine, along with their families, came to Chicago, and St. Nicholas took those students in at school and supported their families. So this was a community that their heart had reached out, but they were overwhelmed by the need. So the deacons thought, in that icon, that third icon of service, that we could be of assistance there. And so you spoke earlier, Father, about the size of the diaconate in Chicago, and it's actually the largest in the world. But I think the most important thing is the heart of this community, which has really been overwhelming to me as the new vicar, their generosity and their heart.
This donation came from the Diaconate Council, which is an arm of the diaconate community. If you want to think of it as a men's club of the parish, they raise funds and they take those funds and use it to donate various charities. We have standard charities that we give every year at Lent, but this was a special situation with the in Ukraine and many of these children coming over, that the council decided they wanted to do something special to try to help the Ukrainian refugees coming.
If we back up a little bit, and maybe for our listeners, begin with James and then Dave, is people have to realize the both of you were not ordained the permanent diaconate in a vacuum. It just didn't appear one day. And I'm sure if anybody had told you 30 years ago that you'd one day be permanent in the Archdiocese, you said, probably not. So maybe for a moment, James, tell us your story. Who inspired you? Who challenged you? Who was inspirational in the road to diacon? And then also for Dave.
So I think initially for me, family, my grandmother specifically, she tells a story that if we have time, I'll share later, the story about.
Tell the story now.
About a prophetess. About me at about 3 or 4 years old. I went to church with her. There was a prophetess at the church, so she's from a Protestant faith. And I was somewhere back in the congregation. My grandmother was up front, and so we weren't together. So there was no way the prophetess could know. And she said, "Well, you have a grandson, and he's here, and God has a calling on his life. I believe he's going to be a priest or a preacher one day." So I would hear that story occasionally as a child, just every now and then. And then I think going through Catholic schools, I started at Our Lady of Sorrows, then went to Precious Blood, to see the priest and the women, the religious, pour in and dedicate themselves in our community, and I'm from the west side of Chicago, was, I think, the first inkling of what, service looked like for me, and was inspiring, just that model of giving back, faithful service. I remember very distinctly kind of the care and love, especially the religious, put into us kids in grade school. And I started considering it there at then Precious Blood, and thinking about going to Quigley North. We would never go to Quigley South, but Quigley North at that time, and thinking about seminary.
The building that we happen to be in right now for the radio program is a former Quigley Seminary, which was Mark's high school.
Right. Yeah, we were built on the pool, I think.
Exactly. We're now over the pool.
Mm-hmm.
So then went to St. Ignatius, and then later on in life, just felt this calling or questioning, really, right? And I say I spent probably 10 years searching for, I'll quote, truth, wherever I could find it, and realized I looked everywhere, but in depth in the Bible, while I was attending church. So I started that process, and then started talking to other men about the possibilities of being a deacon, being a preacher, and I thought about the call for about 10 years, and it just stayed with me until I said yes. It was always there until I said yes. And so I made that decision back in 2009.
That is a great story. Dave, we're going to get to your story, but Mark's going to take us to break. We come back. Dave, your story to the Diaconate Road.
We're at WNDZ, 750 AM, Catholic Chicago, 312-255-8408. Father Greg Sakowicz, Mark Tracy here. Or you can go to youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. We'll be back in a few minutes. Please stay tuned.
Catholic Charities' Refugee Resettlement Program has been especially busy this year, assisting individuals and families who have fled dangerous situations in their homeland, including Afghanistan and the Ukraine. The Refugee Resettlement Team helps with everything they need to start to rebuild their lives in a new country, including housing, employment, clothing, food, English classes, and referrals for legal and immigration services. The refugees are tremendously grateful for the compassion and practical help they're receiving, and they're giving back and helping each other plan for a brighter, safer future. Volunteer opportunities are currently available for those who would like to be family mentors and tutors so children and adults can practice English. To learn more about these rewarding opportunities, call 312-655-7096. That's 312-655-7096.
There is no doubt this life is short. It is in you I trust to spread your truths, your goodness, and love. It is you who will give a leader to our church. Who will fill these shoes?
We are hiring. Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of Chicago is looking for mission-driven individuals who want to help make a positive difference in the lives of people in need throughout Cook and Lake counties. Be part of a diverse, talented team of professionals in the largest human services organization in the Midwest. We are dedicated to helping people chart a more stable, happier future for themselves, and we accompany anyone in need, regardless of faith, gender, race, or ethnicity. Competitive salaries and generous benefits add to the satisfaction you'll have every day, knowing that you're helping us amplify our impact in Chicago. To see our list of employment opportunities, visit CatholicCharities.net.
We're back, WNDZ, 750 AM, Catholic Chicago, 312-255-8408. You can go to youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. Father Greg Sakowitz here, Mark Teresi. We're with Deacon James Norman and Deacon Dave Brensick. Deacon Dave, your story, your vocation story.
Sure. I think for many deacons, it started with an invitation from a pastor, from another deacon, because they recognize something in this, individual that they have potential to be, a deacon. I was very involved in my parish. At the time, it was St. Barbara in Brookfield. Mm-hmm. I was a lector. I was a Eucharistic minister. I was involved with RCAA. My wife and I were involved with the local beds, the local homeless program. And one time when we were at the cathedral, Deacon John Debnar, who was a longtime deacon at St. Barbara, we were talking, and he said, "Dave, have you ever thought about the diaconate?" And at the time, I had 2 young children. They were in grammar school. And he says, you're doing everything that a deacon does, you're with your involvement in the parish. He goes, I think you should seriously consider it. So that kind of got me thinking, but I had 2 young children, and I'm like, no, it's not the right time. Shortly after that, a seminarian came to the parish to talk about vocations. And again, it got me thinking about, maybe I should, really consider this sometime. And the clincher for me, and this is kind of an unusual story, is that one morning I had a very vivid dream, and I dreamt that Deacon John and I were in the sacristy of St. Barbara, and John was placing the stole of the deacon over me.
Wow.
And I woke up, I'm like, maybe God wants me to do this now. Mm-hmm. And at the time, my wife was not Catholic. She was Methodist. I talked to Jane about what had happened and these strong feelings I was having. And she said, I think you're being called.
Wow.
So that's my story. And the diaconate has been one of the greatest blessings in my life.
Well, you're both a blessing to all of us in the Archdiocese and beyond, and way beyond your parishes and families. It's interesting, someone could say, "Oh, Dave, what a coincidence you had that dream." And I love the definition of coincidence. A coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. Great definition. A coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. So thank you for sharing those two profound stories. Maybe a question that, to help do some clarification. James, what is the biggest myth about the diaconate that you want to always tell people that the diaconate is not? So what's some of the myths out there, like, as a deacon is this or this, and you're saying, no, that's not true. I'm sure both answer that question, beginning, though, with James. James, really can see on TV or on video, you're laughing.
Smiling. Well, one of the biggest things I often have to remind people, I wasn't always a deacon. So, that I'm a person too. I think one of the remarkable things, immediately after ordination, people started to say deacon, and James Norman disappeared. I don't know if that happened for Dave as well, but it's like that identity disappeared. So I constantly have to remind people that, I wasn't always a deacon. Sometimes there is confusion in the back of the church between a priest and a deacon. The deacon usually has a stole across the shoulder. And if he has on formal vestments, he has sleeves, which symbolizes that deacons are about working and serving. So that's one that you can identify. Dave, I don't know if there are other myths that you've run across too consistently.
Deacon, I've had several people ask, well, what are deacons paid? What's the salary of a deacon?
Not much.
And there's great eternal insurance is what we say. But no, we don't get paid. It's, and like, your volunteers. I'm like, well, yeah, we do it because we love to serve. And that just stuns some people.
We're at the cathedral, we're blessed with three phenomenal deacons. We have Deacon Dan Welter, Deacon Dennis Roback, and Deacon Stan Strom, and the fourth Deacon Mike McCluskey. So we're very blessed for years with strong deacons at Holy Name Cathedral. And also, when you mentioned about the stole, but see, many times when people see a deacon, hi father, because just assuming that you have an Alban, you're a priest. I always tell people, one shoulder is a sign of diaconate. The stole over both shoulders is a sign of priesthood. But people don't see that right away. They say, hi father, how are you? Oh, I'm a deacon. I mean, not me, but for you. And so it gets confusing, but it's all about serving the Lord. Mark?
So let me flip it to you. So Father Greg Sakowicz, rector, Holy Name Cathedral, you've been pastor to other parishes. How do you see the role of deacon?
Well, first of all, since I've been newly ordained back in 1979, in every parish I've been involved in, I've been blessed with tremendous deacons, most of them married, so the couples and their families. For me, it's been a very, very positive experience. And Dave and James have already talked about it in terms of serving the people of God in word, liturgy, and to the poor. And it's an attitude. It's one of giving. It's one of sacrificing. It's being there for your people and asking people, what do you want to have happen? And let's make it happen. Let's make this work together. And so just personally, because the diacon started in 72, ordained in 79 at Church of the Holy Spirit. So all 44 years or 43 and a half years, the role of the deacon is someone who the word is also assisting, but also they take tremendous leadership in their faith communities, and it shows. And so when I see James here and Dave, you both would be welcomed at the cathedral. I'm not taking you from your parishes, but it'd be a joy to be with you. And I look at someone like even Mark Teresi. Mark, you started at Quigley and Niles College. That's where we met. And Mark chose the sacrament of marriage with beautiful wife Mary and 4 children, wonderful children, and now grandchildren. But Mark, you would have been a tremendous priest or deacon. Out of curiosity, Were you so busy with serving the people of God in your career, because your whole life has been church, that you chose not the diaconate?
Well, James and Dave had that call. I never felt that call. My call was to serve the church the way I've done it, and
you've done a phenomenal job.
Well,
and everybody knows Mark Teresi.
But the great thing for me, separate from your guys, and I want to talk about the sacramental piece, is music has been a part of my ministry for almost 50 years, and I've been able sacramentally to be present to people in that role. Now, what about both of you? So James, maybe, and then Dave. Sacramentally, explain to folks your sacramental role as deacons.
And so there are in two ways I'll describe that. So you'll see a deacon obviously in the Mass, assisting with Mass. You'll see deacons witnessing weddings. You'll see deacons performing baptisms. You'll see deacons leading prayer service or Eucharistic adoration, maybe participating there. You'll find me, for instance, at St. Ethelreda School on the first Friday of each month, leading a prayer service for the children, the teachers, and the families. You'll find me at our Dignity Breakfast on the second and fourth Saturday of each month at Our Lady of Sorrows Basilica, feeding homeless men and women, along with other volunteers. You might see me leading a retreat, or Dave was just facilitating a retreat, a men's retreat this weekend. And I'll let Dave share some of where he's involved as a deacon.
Yeah, and we have deacons, I'm involved with the bereavement ministry, visiting the sick. We have deacons serving at helping at hospitals, in the prison. Things like Zacchaeus House, which is a transitional home for men in coming out of prison or who have may be homeless. So deacons can serve in a variety of capacities. And someone might say, well, you don't have to be ordained to do those things, to bring community at the hospital or the sick or whatever. But being a deacon is so much more. It transforms you and your relationship with the Lord. During formation, if I may, it was I'm a writer, and the experience that I had with how the Holy Spirit was guiding me through formation was just so inspirational. And I said, if I may, this is a psalm that I wrote right before I was ordained. Accept me, Lord, as your humble servant. Let me be thy instrument. I seek to serve your people, Lord, giving of myself in all I do. Your words of hope are on my lips. Your message of peace will I proclaim. The cries of the poor move my heart. Help me, Lord, to ease their burdens. The grieving long to be consoled. Use me, Lord, to bring them peace. Lord, pour forth your Holy Spirit that I may share your sacred grace. Accept me, Lord, as your humble servant. Let me be thy instrument.
Beautiful.
Amen. That's beautiful.
Thank you for sharing.
We're going to end on the program on this note, that segment. So you wrote that then, Dave, about 1999?
Yeah, right before ordination, yes.
Right before ordination. And now, James, if anyone would like to learn more about the diaconate program, give us an email address, give us a phone number.
You can contact Sister Caroline at 847-837-4563.
That number once again. One more time.
Sister Caroline, 847-837-4563. There's an Exploring the Diaconate program or session held every month of the year. It's usually at 7:30 p.m. They are by Zoom. The next one will be December 6th, and that's put on by the Institute for Diaconal Studies, led by our Director of Diaconal Studies, and that's Deacon Bob Puhala. It's an exceptional program with exceptional staff. I encourage you, if you have the calling, or please go to one of the sessions, meet the staff, explore and learn more about the diaconate.
And that phone number one more
God's
time,
placed it on
James.
your heart. The number again, 847-837-4563.
I want to thank in a very
Sister
special
Caroline.
way Sister Caroline, Deacon James Norman, and Deacon Dave Brunsick. You've both been phenomenal. You've been on the program before. You'll be on again. You both, along with your wives and families, are such a great witness. And also, we need you. So thank you for the love you show and compassion in serving the poor, word, liturgy. So thank you to James and to Dave. Listening to Catholic Chicago on WNDZ 750 AM, 312-255-8408. Also get us on youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. Father Greg Sakowitz and Mark Teresi, stay with us. And again, do not touch that dial.
At Catholic Charities, we want to remind you that we are here for anyone who is a victim of domestic violence or anyone who has a concern about someone they think may be a victim. Domestic violence affects millions of people each year, both women and men, of every race, religion, culture, and economic status. It includes physical, psychological, and emotional abuse, inflicted in both subtle and overt ways. The impact on children can be devastating. If you or someone you know are victims of domestic violence and you are looking for a place for healing and recovery, call us at 773-935-3434 in Cook County and 224-430-4977 in Lake County. A safer, happier tomorrow can begin today.
I am a seminarian.
The Church needs compassionate and well-trained priests to help guide each of us through life.
What inspires me, what draws me always to the priesthood is continue to see priests be a beacon of hope for other people.
You can play a part in the education of these young men as they prepare for a life of service to others.
I want to be that beacon of hope too, and it sets my heart on fire.
To support our seminarians, make your gift at archchicago.org/seminarian fund or call 312-534-7959.
The cemetery ministry is a core ministry of our Catholic faith tied to the corporal works of mercy. It's comforting to know that our Catholic cemeteries are caring for the remains of our loved ones awaiting the resurrection. There are 44 Archdiocese of Chicago Catholic cemeteries willing to help you in your time of loss. Call 708-449-6100 or visit CatholicCemeteriesChicago.org. Catholic Cemeteries, serving the Catholic community since 1837.
You're listening to Catholic Chicago. Ahead, the Archdiocese of Chicago brings you programs about the people, events, and issues that touch our lives. Thanks for letting us be part of your morning. Now again, Catholic Chicago.
Welcome back to Catholic Chicago on WNDZ 750 AM. Father Greg Sakowitz along with Mark Teresi, 312-255-8408. Also get us on youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. Again, youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. Mark, that was a great first half with James and with Dave about the permanent diaconate.
Very dedicated men, yes.
And families, and so it just tremendous. But now we have part 2 lined up, and we have live in studio. Well, I'll get to that in a moment. Father Vic Ivers, a priest from the Archdiocese of Chicago who is deeply rooted in the faith, passed away on January 18th, 2014, at the age of 95 at St. Joseph Parish in Libertyville. As his final Mass was coming to a conclusion, he stopped, took off his shoes, laid them in front of the altar, and said, So now, who will fill these shoes? Then he processed out, leaving the shoes behind with a question that remains for all of us today. The Who Will Fill These Shoes event has been celebrated in our archdiocese ever since. Guest in studio live, not dead, live, Father Tim Monahan, the vocation director of the archdiocese. Tim, welcome to the program.
Good to be here, Father
welcome.
Greg.
Good
Great
see
to be with you,
Mark.
Tim. In fact, Tim is a neighbor because he lives next door in the Bishop Quarterhouse, where I'm at the rectory at 730 North Wabash. You're right next door in the Bishop Quarterhouse. But now your offices are no longer at the
Right. We're no longer at 750 North Wabash. We
Your
moved our
office are
offices at the St. John Paul II Newman Center at
Oh,
the
and-
UIC campus.
And Tim ordained in what year?
2009.
But now I know where my story was as a seminarian, Niles College Seminary of Loyola University, the theologate Mundelein St. Mary of the Lake Seminary, ordained in 79. You have a different road. Tell us your road to the priesthood, because see, I think people, and Mark knows us so well, people say, okay, like Father Tim, Father Greg, we were always not priests. We come from backgrounds. I'm from Park Ridge.
You weren't hatched as a priest.
We weren't hatched as a priest. Mary said it was in grammar school, Notre Dame College Prep
Yeah.
for Boys, class of 71. And so maybe for a moment, Tim, as part of your vocation story, is tell us your story, that road that led to the priesthood.
Thank you, Father Greg. Yeah, that's a big thing. So I'm in my 6th year as vocation director, and what I notice is that's one of the biggest things is trying to help our young men and also the families see that priesthood is not one-dimensional. Like, we're not hatched priests, or we don't just celebrate Mass and preach.
Right.
There's a fullness to what we're called to live. So my own path, grew up in a small town in central Illinois, Arcola, town of 2,700. Now it's about 3,000. So it's really exploded over the past 40
Arcola,
years.
near what big town?
Champaign-Urbana, just south of Champaign-Urbana. So I grew up there, 4th of 8 kids. It was a wonderful place to grow up, and I had tons of cousins there. I'm one of 31.
Wow.
Grandchildren. So always had tons of cousins to hang out with, and lots of sports because there are only 5 channels on. So it was one of the best strategies for my parents to say, there's not much to watch, so go outside. So we always were playing tons of sports, played a lot of basketball, football, baseball, wiffle ball, and swimming, track, whatever it was. So went to high school at the University of Illinois. They have a laboratory high school, so I call it Uni High up in Champaign-Urbana. Went there.
Okay.
And then from there I went to the University of Notre Dame, majored in finance. Thought I was going to do that.
What class were you?
Class of 99.
Okay, I was class of 84, graduate, so we're both domers.
Nice.
Right on the line there, okay.
Great victory Saturday night.
Against Clemson. Just
that
crushed
was
him. But now, okay, now a
That's
little
not-
sidebar. Where was this Notre Dame team against Marshall and Stanford?
Exactly. They fell asleep. They're going to regret that so badly.
Oh, I mean, when they lost to Ohio State 21-10, I get it, at the big house at Ohio.
But at home.
At home to Marshall and Stanford, and the way they played against. And Clemson ranked 4th in the country, a tremendous team. That defensive 7 for Clemson, they say 3 of those guys are going NFL high in the draft choice. And Notre Dame, that crowd, I saw part of the game, ferocious. And but where was this team earlier? Because they're a great team, but
the inconsistency.
But Mark.
But you digress.
Okay. So we welcome to our sports program here.
Yeah, really.
Our Carla number is 312-255-842. After Notre Dame, we'll talk about the Bears and then the Bulls and the Blackhawks. And so, sorry for digressing.
So
you started, by the way.
University of Notre Dame, majored in finance, graduated 99. Wonderful experience there. Met lifelong friends. Was very much further formed in my faith. And just so grateful for my time there. So then I ended up joining a monastery.
Yeah.
Contemplative, very small monastery.
How long after graduation from Notre Dame?
6 months.
Were you ever in a foreign country? Do I remember that?
I lived 9 years abroad.
That's what I
Yeah.
thought.
Now wait, Tim, as you graduated University of Notre Dame, what drew you to a monastery versus, let's say, joining the Holy Cross priest or some diocese?
I was 21 years old. I was trying to figure things out. There was this burning desire. I wanted to figure out, was God calling me to the priesthood? I had been dating through college. Again, I was majoring in finance. I was thinking of different jobs that I could do. So what drew me to the monastery was a sense of the biblical go to the desert, dedicate yourself to listening, to prayer, to manual labor. And that was a very rich experience for me.
Which monastery, by the way?
Well, it's now defunct. It no longer exists, but it was...
you had nothing to do with that, did you?
I did not.
Nice going, Tim.
Yeah, really.
So I ended up... I was with the monastery for over 10 years.
Which one?
It's called the Little Brothers of the Eucharist.
Where?
So I started, it was in South Texas, but then I was sent for philosophy studies in Italy, outside of Rome, and then mainly I was in the south of France, in Toulon.
Right, and I remember that because Tim would come up to the development office, and when I was at Mundelein, and we would chat, and I remember you were in France for a while.
Out of curiosity, what kept you from joining Gethsemane, the Trappist Monastery, or the one in Dubuque?
New Mallory Abbey. Yeah. I was 21. I had met a priest who was at this monastery.
Oh, okay.
He had given a retreat my senior year in college.
That makes it okay.
And that was extremely helpful. Mm-hmm. And I had a sense he was a good mentor. And so I thought, you know what, let me give that. I wasn't thinking about joining the monastery. I just wanted to go kind of for a desert experience or sabbatical experience. And it's funny when I talk to discerners now, because I discerned during that period, entered the monastery, was ordained a priest over in France in 2009. The monastery, there was only 6 of us, so it was a very tiny monastery. That closed. So discernment is a lifelong practice. It's a lifelong spiritual practice. And so there I was. At this point, it was 2011. I'm a priest. I'm in France, but I have to discern once again what's the next step.
And now the monastery closed in 2011. And then, actually, we're going to put this on pause. What was the next step after we come from break? Take us, Mark.
Oh, that was smooth. WNDZ. WNDZ.
That's why I get the big bucks.
7:50 a.m. 312-255-8408. Or you can go to youtube.com/CatholicChicago, and we'll be back with Father Tim Monahan and continue to talk about your vocation journey toward this position now that you're here with the Archdiocese, inspiring young people to consider and discern their vocation. We'll be back in a few minutes. Please stay tuned.
Have an old bicycle that's not being used? Consider donating it to Catholic Charities Veterans Bike Project of Lake County. Skilled volunteers are refurbishing bicycles to make them safe and ready to be used by veterans to get to and from their new places of work. We also gratefully accept financial contributions that are used to purchase bike helmets and other safety accessories. Our veterans have faithfully served the United States, and now it is our privilege to serve them. For more information on the Veterans Bike Project of Lake County, call 847-782-4219. That's 847-782-4219.
There is no doubt this life is short. It is in you I trust to spread your truths, your goodness, and love. It is you who will give a leader to our church. Who will fill these shoes?
Catholic Charities has had the privilege of helping people in need in Cook and Lake County for more than 100 years. We would like to take this opportunity to thank our frontline workers who, despite the unprecedented challenges of the past 2 years, continue to excel at their jobs every day. From the warehouse staff members who pack boxes of nutritious foods for low-income seniors, to the dedicated WIC employees who have remained open for families with children under the age of 5, to our volunteers and restaurant partners who ensure that meals are available for those experiencing hunger, to our service coordinators and our professional counselors who continue their vital work in innovative ways, to our food pantry staff, and to all those who work at Catholic Charities Call Center, finding solutions for every person who reaches out to us for help. Charity is at the heart of all you do, and we salute you.
We're back, WNDZ, 750 AM, Catholic Chicago, 312-255-8408. Father Greg Sackett's Mark Tracy here. You can go to youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. We're with our Vocations Director of the Archdiocese of Chicago, Father Tim Monahan. Tim, you want to continue your journey from France?
Sure. So I was ordained in 2009 and was doing studies for my licentiate in theology, which was a great experience. I was with the Dominicans in Toulouse, and then the monastery closed. And so at that point, the bishop in France said, figure out what you basically discern what the next step is. So I reached out to Father Larry McBrady, who's a cousin here in Chicago. A lot of my siblings lived here, still live here, aunts and uncles, cousins. So my discernment process led me here to make the request to ask for admission here in Chicago as a priest who wanted to incarnate into the presbyterate here.
So you spoke to Father Jerry Boland.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep. So at the time, Father Jerry Boland was head of the Incarnation Committee and in charge of what we call extern priests who were coming in. So I showed up here in 2011, and I was assigned first to Holy Family in Inverness. So a shout out to all the parishioners there with Father Terry Kean. So I was there 1 year as part of the incarnation process, and then from there I went to Mary Seat of Wisdom, just down the street from Father Greg's childhood home.
My home parish.
So I was there 4 years.
4 years in Mary Seat of Wisdom.
4 years Mary Seat of Wisdom.
Were you with Jerry Gunderson?
With Father Jerry Gunderson.
Also with James Wallace.
With James Wallace. Yeah. We had a great setup. Yep. Father Rich Greck, for anyone who knows him.
Sure.
Resurrectionist priest. So we had that was, again, great welcome to Chicago to have those 5 years between Holy Family and then Mary Seat of Wisdom. And then in 2017, actually late 2016, I was invited to become vocation director, which started July 1st.
Then you were incarnated in the Archdiocese in what year?
In spring of 2017.
So who did you succeed then?
I succeeded Father Francis Bitterman, who's currently pastor at St. Joseph.
Phenomenal job.
Good guy.
Yeah. And so in 17 became the vocation director.
So I finished 5 years. I'm in my 6th year of being vocation director.
And God bless you, it's hard work.
Now, interesting.
It's rewarding, but it's hard.
Because Francis was also, I think, in an order.
He was. He was in the Society of Our Lady of the Most Holy Trinity.
And I'm a former vocation director in the college seminary with Mark.
Right.
I was there from 85 to 92 at Niles College Seminary, Loyola. So I know the work of vocation directors, and Mark was on the faculty. We were together. But now, switching gears, Father Vic Ivers, a tremendous priest. And how's this, Mark? At the age of 95, saying his last Mass at the age of 95, official. And then, again, tell us that story. What happened on that day in January of 2014.
Yeah.
So he was at St. Joseph's in Libertyville, and he basically put down his shoes, took them off, and said, he looked out at the crowd and really issued a prophetic challenge to say, who will fill these shoes? And so that was the phrase that Bishop Barron, our former Father Robert Barron, who was longtime faculty at Mundelein, he was the one who started this event when he was president rector up at Mundelein. So he was the one who started this event with Cardinal George, saying, all right, let's have an annual gathering of young men in the Archdiocese to see Mundelein Seminary, to spend time with our seminarians and our priests, to have a celebration of this priestly calling, and to stir in the hearts of our young men the desire to discern, to say, is God calling me to the priesthood? Can I be the one to fill those shoes?
Now, here's a little bit of the drama of that situation. Deacon Denny Mudd was there at the Mass, and he let me know about it. But Vic Ivers was leaving, so he was processing out, turned around, came back to the altar, sat down, took his shoe. So
very dramatic.
People thought this was it. So I don't know if in that moment it came to him or he planned on that.
But he was actually walking out, processionally out,
Right.
turned around, came back up, and people think, what's going on with this guy?
Right, exactly.
Instead of walking out, he's walking back in
great.
again, sat down, took his shoes off, placed them in front of the altar, then walked out with his stockings on.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. Thank
Isn't
you,
that powerful?
Mark. Yeah, very powerful. I didn't know that part of the story.
That is tremendous. And now, maybe for our listeners, it happens the day after Thanksgiving. And tell us more, Tim.
Sure. So we've this event has been going. I think we're on our 8th year of it. We took a little bit of a pause, but I think it's our 8th year overall. And this takes place on the Friday after Thanksgiving, which it's an important family time. But with our very crowded calendars, there's no ideal time. So Bishop Barron and Cardinal George had started this on the Friday after Thanksgiving. So basically, what we do is we invite 13 to 18-year-old young guys with their parents.
Oh.
And we even organize transportation from the south side because I know it's a long trip. So what we do is guys arrive at the seminary. We get to show off Mundelein Hall.
Wow.
And just
I love it.
It's beautiful. So they get to see the campus. So they come to Mundelein Hall. They get settled in. Then we go over to the main chapel. We have Mass at 11 a.m.
Mass with whom?
Mass, well, it's basically with all of our seminarians and,
Okay.
and the priests that come and bring them. And all of our bishops and the cardinal are welcome, but we understand that because of their busy schedule, we always invite them and they're very welcome to come, but I don't want to make too many demands on their schedule. So they're always welcome to come. So we have Mass together, then we're going to go over and have lunch back in the dining hall. Then we're going to do a Eucharistic procession from the dining hall right in front of that Mary statue. We're going to go out, be able to see some of the grounds. We're going to go to the
all
grotto.
the way up to the mall? Do you go that far?
We're gonna see what the weather is like.
Yeah.
But basically, the simple procession is we want to go through the St. Therese Rose Garden.
Oh yeah.
Past the main statue and then into the grotto. Have some time with just to give an experience of prayer, of fraternity, of fellowship, and then after the Eucharistic procession is done, we'll be praying a rosary. Then we're going to go over to the gym and play dodgeball.
Oh,
so
with the parents?
Dodgeball?
With the parents?
Oh.
Well,
Yeah.
we'll see how many parents want to play.
God, when I was a kid, I used to love dodgeball.
It's it's a
great-
classic.
oh my
the
God.
game never gets old, no matter how
No.
young or old you
Well,
are.
I remember
so.
I was in 8th grade.
I feel
I
like
took a shot to the face. I
shows.
had a
explains a lot, doesn't it, Mark?
I had a cannon for an arm, and we could fire that ball. I was focusing on one kid, another ball. We had 3 balls going at one time, and man,
It's the ones that you don't see coming hurt you the most.
This thing looked like a bullet. This dodgeball just slamming the side of the head.
But we digress.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I hope we're having fun, Mark. I'd like to thank you for being your last program today.
I know, it's been very nice.
It does explain a lot, doesn't it? No, I'll never forget. God, that's a great game.
Yeah.
And so into the gym for dodgeball.
Into the gym for dodgeball.
And I'll tell you that the gym at Mundelein Seminary, I used to play a lot of basketball there.
Yeah.
And so did you. No, you didn't, Tim. Because
Well, I
you weren't
played a
there.
lot. I didn't go to seminary there, but I've done the IPF Spiritual Director Training Program there, and I'm in the doctoral program there.
But that gym is about twice the size of a normal floor.
It's huge. I
When
love it.
When you go for a runaway, like a breakaway layup, you're running for a week.
Is the pool open?
No, the pool's not open.
Still
not. Yeah.
Oh, it's
it's
not
on
open.
the list. That's on
That
the list.
was one of our projects.
Okay.
Anyway.
Now, the thing is, 13 to 18-year-olds, if they want to learn more about coming to this day, how can they do that, Tim?
ChicagoPriest.com. We have a
ChicagoPriest.com.
Yep.
Now, if someone wants to give you a call, what's your number?
My number is 847. You know what? I got a new cell. I'm so embarrassed. It's right on the website.
It's on the website.
I got a new work cell when we moved offices.
Okay, and so
Yeah.
but the website is, again,
ChicagoPriest.com.
Chicago Priest. There it is on the screen, ChicagoPriest.com. And so it's not for
So we have
someone-
registration. There's English, Spanish, and Polish for
Okay.
registration. We have some videos there to help invite to the event. And we have a simple breakdown of what we're looking for in that event. And it's just, we have English and Spanish for the video, but the whole thing is sometimes guys get a little afraid of saying, oh, I don't know if I want to be a priest, so I'm not going to come to the event. And say, well, this is going to be a fun, prayerful, good event. Just we ask for guys just to have the courage to give it a shot. Just come and check out the seminary.
There's no pressure.
There's no pressure.
Commitment.
You can bring your parents. You can bring your buddies. It just is a chance to, again, see the beautiful seminary, meet some of our seminarians, bring your pastor, ask your pastor to come. So we want to spend some time together. I promise guys will enjoy it. We've been doing this for several years. Guys always love it. And it's one of those things that for all of our listeners, if it's your son, your nephew, your godson, your grandson, if it's somebody you know, what I always say to people, if you see priestly qualities in this young man, make a well-worded invitation. I see these good qualities in you. I've heard about this event. I'd love for you to look into it, and maybe you could go.
Mark's been 15 years in the seminary as development director. I spent 4 years as a seminarian, 75 to 79. The most beautiful grounds in the world, the lake, the trees. Now, granted, it's the day after Thanksgiving. A lot of the leaves are down. But just to walk the grounds, the acreage is phenomenal, and a lot of deer walking the property is like a chunk of heaven. It's even just to see the grounds and the chapel and the buildings.
It's over 100 years old. It's over 100 years old, and this is where all of our Chicago priests and priests from all over the Midwest and the country have been formed and have lived some incredible years. So
yeah, I think it was 34 dioceses when I was there. But the other part of the campus is the wonderful generosity of the benefactors.
Yes.
That campus looks the way it does because people care about priesthood, and they want that environment to be conducive to guys preparing well, for the priest.
Those are some of the best years of my life. When I entered the theologate at Mundelein, God's blessed me the whole journey. But those years of study, prayer, reflection, to be with classmates, tremendous faculty, benefactors.
And maybe just an acknowledgement, maybe God rest his soul, but Father Pat Boyle,
funerals this
wonderfully
Thursday.
Dedicated and funny faculty person, is going to be buried from Mundelein.
This Thursday
Is it tomorrow?
No, Thursday.
It's Thursday.
Thursday.
The funeral. Yeah.
At 10:30
in the main chapel.
Yeah, and he was a tremendously important part of the seminarian's life. I mean, he was a realist and a wonderful academician. They loved the guy.
Yeah.
And then let me ask you this quick question in the last 30 seconds, Tim. The work you do is very challenging, very rewarding, very important. What gets you out of bed in the morning to do this?
I have a sense that Jesus is asking me to do this during this time, and that it's that sense of like walking with him, and then him seeing somebody and saying, I want you to think about the priesthood. And that the fact that I can be involved in that is incredible. I love being a priest, and to be able to invite guys into that is an incredible joy.
It's kind of the same way I felt from 85 to 92 when Father McLaughlin asked me to be the vocation director at the college seminary. Same thing. Love being a priest, and as a young
some
man
great
consider
priests
priesthood.
you worked with who are active in ministry now.
Need to bring it to a close. I want to thank in a very special way Father Tim Monahan, the vocation director of the Archdiocese.
Thank
Tim,
you,
you are
Greg.
a tremendous priest.
Thank you, Mark.
And keep up the great work you do, and joy sharing the Lord's ministry with you. Special thanks also to Mark Teresi, co-host. Special thanks to Michael May,
Mike and
Brian, Hockey Hitman Brock, for the great work you do. To our listeners, God bless. Have a great week.
Bye, everybody.
Join us every Monday through Friday at this time for Catholic Chicago. You can stream our programs live or listen to past programs by visiting our website, archchicago.org, and clicking on Radio TV. And please connect with Catholic Chicago on social media.